Thank you for listening to the Sunday morning message from the Awakening Ways spiritual community in Atascadero, California. We invite you to experience the love and the joy of living the consciously awakened life right here, right now.
Good morning. I am Joanne Lindberg Morgan, and I'm blessed to be speaking with you again. There was a little girl watching her mother do the dishes, and suddenly she noticed that her mother had some white hair contrasting through her brunette hair. And she says, "Mom, how come some of your hairs are white?" Well, every time a little girl misbehaves and makes her mommy unhappy, one of Mom's hairs turns white. And the child thinks about this revelation for a minute, and then she said, "Boy, you must have really ticked Grandma off." My talk today is somewhat of a potpourri on the subject of mothers and other goddesses, and I will tie it all together at the end. Mother's Day in America was started by Anna Jarvis as a tribute to her own mother. Before she died, she objected to the way Mother's Day ultimately became legalized and exploited. And I thought, this is a wonderful example of telling God how you want your desire laid out. Because she had an ideal, but needed to control the outcome. I want a celebration, but I'll tell you how to celebrate it. And we in New Thought know that when we speak our word, when we speak it clearly into the law, and our desire manifests, sometimes it manifests far more expansively than we ever dreamed. And that's when we know it's time to let go and let God, because God has bigger ideas than we had. I grew up in Wales, part of the United Kingdom. And I went to church on what was called Mothering Sunday. Now, a little bit of history. This was a day set aside over 300 years ago so that those who lived and worked in their employers' homes could return home to their mothers once a year and honor their mothers on Mothering Sunday. Clearly, minimum wage and regulated work hours didn't apply then. At some point throughout Europe, the church interjected itself into this celebration, and eventually the mother church became the focal point, superseding the honoring of the personal mother. But the further we go back in history, celebrating the feminine aspect of God is not a new concept. But for a long time, it was an abandoned concept. What is new is not having both the feminine and the masculine aspects of the deity at the core of spiritual belief. New as in the last millennium, the last 1,000 years. The ancient people the world over honored and worshipped goddesses as well as gods. Now, the oldest reference is to Gaia, who it was believed existed before time began. Eternal, prehistoric Earth Mother, fertility incarnate. It was believed that everything that lives, breathing or not, overflows with her life. The life energy itself. The ancients believed that all bodies return to her black, fertile earth, and that all new life springs from her. Another is the triple goddess, the goddess with three faces, also known under various names throughout the planet. She was very, very much celebrated in ancient times. And the three faces are the Virgin, strong and self-defined, the mother nurturing, the source of all nourishment, and the goddess of death and transformation. And the triple goddess, of course, symbolizes every aspect of existence from birth to death and beyond. Changing woman is revered still by the Native American people of the Southwest. She changes from a baby to an old woman, depending on the circumstances in which she is called for help. And all of the stages, of course, in between the baby and the old woman. She too is considered to be the source of all abundance, of all life, and teaches the people how to live in harmony. But she is still very much a part of life today. The ancient I beg your pardon. The ancient Egyptians worshipped Isis, the mother, giver of all life, total femininity. The Chinese Buddhists worship the goddess of mercy, devoted to saving humankind. In Polynesia, it's Pele. In Wales, it's Rhiannon. And in Asia, it's Kuan Yin. But each revered as the feminine face of God. Just as throughout the ages, the masculine face of God has been called by many names: Allah, Buddha, Yahweh, Jehovah, Spirit, and many other names that we do not know of. So the goddesses all had their names. The goddess represents omnipotence, love, sacrifice, and transformation, not to the exclusion of the masculine, but an integral part of the whole, both moving together in the dance of deity. You know, in New Thought, we refer to Father, Mother, God, or some of us, Mother, Father, God. The thinker behind all thought, the creator behind all creation, recognizing that the I am does not have a specific gender. It's the Mother, Father, God in the act of creating all that is. I'd like to share a story with you. This is the story of a family, Jim and Kathy and their two children, Leslie, 17, and Vince, 14. It's a story of courage, of great pain, and of love and renewal. In the summer of 2000, Leslie and Vince were invited to spend a day water skiing at a distant lake with friends. And the night before, Kathy reviewed water safety with them. When she left for work the next morning, they were both still in bed, and she kissed them as they slept and left. She was uneasy all day and sent silent words of prayer for their safety. And late in the afternoon, she got a phone call from Jim. The children were in separate hospitals with major injuries from a car accident. Leslie had been driving, no drugs, no alcohol, no speed were involved. There was no explanation for the accident. Kathy rushed to one hospital and Jim to another. The doctor met Kathy and told her that Vince was dead. He appeared to be sleeping till Kathy saw the extent of his injuries. Jim met her in the hall with the words, "Vince has got to be okay." Leslie had also died. They moved in a fog for many months, unable to comprehend that their two children were both gone. Kathy could no longer have their children. And one night they received a phone call from Kathy's youngest sister, Marianne. "If you want another child, I will have one for you. This is something I can do for you, and I'd be honored to do it." After much prayer and talking, Jim and Kathy decided to take Marianne up on her offer. Her husband, David, and their three children were united behind Marianne. Several doctors refused to do the procedure, but they found one who was enthusiastic. Mary Ann received Kathy's egg and Jim's sperm, and 3 weeks later, they got the news she was pregnant with their child. Mary Ann was uncomplaining through all the challenges of the pregnancy and gave birth on Mother's Day, 2002, to a beautiful little boy whom they named Max, who physically resembled both of his older siblings. Max is not a replacement for Leslie and Vince. He's a gift given to Kathy and Jim by God through the goddess, Mary Ann, a gift beyond their comprehension. They regret that he will never meet his older brother and sister, but yet at the same time, they truly believe that on a soul level, he already knows them. The question for me is not how we tie it together. It's rather, how can we possibly separate one aspect from the other? How do we differentiate between the goddesses of ancient times and the beautiful woman that gave her sister the gift of a new life? I don't believe we can. I think it's all part of the magnificence of creation. All the thinker behind the thought, all the creator behind the creation. And we know it's all God. A woman by the name of Agnes Godsa Bojaxu was born in 1910 in Albania. She was, throughout her young life, dedicated to the church, and at 18 she left home to join the Sisters of Loretto at their abbey in Rathfarnham, Ireland, to learn to speak English. She never saw her mother or her sister again. In 1929, she went to Darjeeling, India, learned to speak Bengali, and taught at a school outside the convent. She was fluent in 5 languages: Bengali, Albanian, Serbian, English, and Hindi. She taught for 17 years and then received what she called the call within the call, to serve the poorest of the poor. And she began her missionary work in 1948. She walked the slums of Calcutta, begging for food. She begged for a place to sleep, and volunteers gathered around her. In 1950, the Vatican gave permission to form missionaries of charity. And by 1997, the original congregation of 13 had expanded to 4,000 sisters, managing orphanages, AIDS hospitals, and charity centers worldwide. They cared for refugees, the blind, the disabled, the aged, the alcoholics, poor and homeless, and victims of flood, famine, and epidemics. She died in September of 1997 at the age of 87. And by 2007, the Missionaries of Charity included over 5,000 sisters, 450 brothers worldwide, operating 600 missions, schools, and shelters in 120 countries. Now, of course, you know that I'm speaking of Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa astounded the world by sharing her love with the disadvantaged and the marginalized, and doing it in a way that highlighted the ability of one person to have the vision and let that vision ignite so that the rest of the world may take part. Now I'm going to tell you about another woman. Her name was Jane Goodall, and Jane Goodall was born in London in 1934. When she was 1 year old, instead of giving her a teddy bear, the very traditional British first-year gift, her father gave her a huge stuffed chimpanzee to commemorate the birth of a baby chimp at the London Zoo. Her friends all said, oh, you'll terrify your child with that thing, but she loved it. She loved all animals, and at the age of 5, she hid in a hen house to find out where eggs came from. Her mother was frantic, but when they found her, the expression on Jane's face was so lit up with joy that she didn't scold her, she just listened to her story. Her dream was to live in Africa, to watch and write about animals. She graduated from high school and could not afford to go to the university, and so she became a secretary working in London. And she was invited to go to a friend's farm in Kenya. She immediately gave up her job in London, went to live with her mother in Bournemouth, and served as a waitress to earn money for her boat fare. One of the highlights of her visit was meeting Dr. Louis Leakey, the famous anthropologist and paleontologist. He hired her as his secretary, assistant, because that was the only way he could figure out, given the nature of the scientific community that was very heavily masculine, it was the only way he could get her into what he did with acceptance. And her dream again was, I want to come as close to talking to the animals as I can. Now, the British authorities were very reluctant to let her live among the wild animals in Africa. This area was still under British control. So her mother volunteered to join her. She gradually won the animals over. It took 2 years for them to accept her presence, but she was constant, there, a present in their life, until they finally accepted her as part of the life in the jungle. She was one of the first to report seeing them hunting for meat. It had been assumed up to that time that all the chimpanzees were vegetarian. And she was the first to observe them making and using stick tools to reach a meal of termites. Again, it was thought that only humans made tools. And she proved that the chimpanzees had a discernible language with over 20 sounds. And this too had been thought to be strictly a human trait. She was among very few people who were allowed to pursue a PhD at Cambridge University who did not have a previous degree. And she went on to achieve other firsts in understanding and advocating for animals and their rights. She recently stated, apparently referring to both people and animals, every individual counts. Every individual has a role to play. Every individual makes a difference. One little note that I noted from her biography, which I found a little humorous. Among the group of chimpanzees whose tribe she was allowed to become a member of was a young chimp who didn't like her. When he eventually became the alpha male of the group, he drove her out and wouldn't allow her to take part in group activities. And I loved it. I thought, this is coming full circle. The alpha male is not wanting her as to be part of the research. And now she gets an alpha chimp to contend with. I just thought that was a little bit humorous. She did the same with animals as Mother Teresa did with people. She put them first, but she didn't limit it to the chimpanzees. She was an advocate for all animals, for the humane care and treatment of animals. Her name became synonymous, just as Mother Teresa's did for caring for people. Her name became synonymous with caring for animals. Now, these women, for me, display the act of mothering. The Mothering Sunday that I was so familiar with. Somehow I felt that they honored that. They were part of that. And I selected these women because they're already part of the fabric of our history. They displayed what a dream and a desire can bring about. They displayed life-changing compassion and service and showed us that when you start with a dream, when you start with an action toward that dream, there is no knowing how far that dream can go, how big it will manifest. And many more of us can be part of the world's future. You know, there are thousands of women across the globe changing the world with acts of loving service. Mother Teresa said, we can't all do great things, but we can all do small things with great love. And as Jane Goodall had said, everyone counts. Everyone can make a difference. So on this Mothering Sunday, perhaps we can think, how can we serve? You know, we can choose to travel across the planet when we are no longer sheltering at home, or we can choose to travel across town. Whether we choose the Echo Homeless Shelter or Woods Humane Society, Awakening Ways Spiritual Community, or a hospice organization, serving in any capacity, in any volunteer position, is doing small things with great love. And maybe for some reason we can't volunteer. We may not be a Mother Teresa or a Jane Goodall, but we can spread love on all life around us. We can have an impact on the people and the planet by being nurturing, loving, and giving. This, to me, is what mothering is all about. And this was the message that I interpreted as a child for Mothering Sunday. We can all be the love that we wish to see in the world. Have a great Mothering Sunday. Namaste.